I'd like to think we've all been there. You've got an instrument at home that just makes a significant amount of noise. Now, by noise, I mean something that sounds just like this. That audio recording is of my P-Bass, and I've made excuses over the years. You've even heard this in one of my earlier YouTube videos where I said, I've got this P-Bass, and for some reason the P-Bass just makes a lot of noise. My guitar is just very noisy. So with the bass guitar, I'm rolling off all of this high end to try to treat some of that noisiness. Well, in today's video, I want to give you some good news. I was actually able to eliminate the noise coming from the P-Bass. I can't say that this is going to be the reason that you have noise on any of your instruments, but whether you're playing a P-Bass or a jazz bass, or even on your electric guitars, if you've got grounding issues, today's video is just for you. I want to give you some hope. I'm not somebody who gets out there and repairs guitars. I've done some experimenting. I've swapped pickups. I put in some different harnesses and things like that. But relatively speaking, I kind of just am one of those, like, I try something, I fail at it, I try it again, I get a little bit better each time. This was the most successful thing I've ever done, trying to do something DIY when it comes to making my instruments sound better. If you're running some sort of home studio or you have an instrument that's very affordable and it makes some noise, I'm super excited to share this information with you. You're gonna be seeing kind of a time lapse of me working on my P-Bass because it's really not that complicated. It just takes a screwdriver, some copper foil, and some of your time. So let's get started. First thing I want to share with you about this P-Bass is that I got this P-Bass at a pawn shop many, many years ago. This is an Austin P-Bass. From what I can understand, you have the name brand, which is like Fender, then you have Squier, and then below Squier, you have something called Austin. So if you've got a Squier P-Bass, it's kind of in the ballpark of that. I don't know what year this thing came out, but it is about as generic as it gets. Now, one of the things about this P-Bass I want you to know, you're going to see that when I remove the pick guard, at first, there's actually like no grounding going on inside the cavity. So the cavity is basically the area underneath the pickups. So underneath the pickups, I'm fairly certain you need to have some sort of conductive material. Usually this is some sort of metal or some way of grounding, okay? And this is where copper foil comes in handy. I've had a copper foil roll in my garage for quite a while because when I was putting my Telecaster together, I knew that people said whenever you have noise issues, one of the best things you can do is put copper foil underneath your pick guard in just as many places as you can, out of sight, out of mind on your instrument. So what ended up happening, the pickups on this P-Bass I got many years ago from my wife. I believe it was like a birthday present. But these are basically the same pickups that Fender will use on like their American series or even on their custom shop stuff. These are supposed to be nice P-Bass pickups. From the moment I installed them, they were noisy. Now, I had thought to myself, these are supposed to be like vintage sounding pickups. So I thought, okay, well, noise must just be part of what makes it vintage. So the thing I want to point out, and you may not be able to see this on the video, but underneath the pickups, there should be an indent, a little hole inside of your P-Bass. It's just a circle about half the size of a dime. That area is where you're supposed to have some sort of spring. Okay, so I went on Amazon and I found this relatively cheap. It's like 13 bucks, and it's this kit of guitar-related screws and bolts. And inside this case, it came with springs that you can use for under your pickups. So I'm fairly certain that underneath the P-Bass pickups, you're gonna see this metal plate. The problem is if the metal plate is just touching the wood of the bass, it doesn't have anywhere for the electricity to go. So whenever you have a signal, what I was having was grounding issues, okay? Grounding issues is kind of the excuse you can throw at just about everything related to noise, but it really is true. If you've got this very specific noise happening on any of your instruments, most likely it's a grounding issue. The cool thing is they're relatively simple to fix. So underneath my bridge here, I put some of the copper foil. The copper foil is like front and back copper, and it peels off just like tape normally does. It's not like double-sided tape, so you do need to put it on a certain area. I've got a grounding wire going from my controls here to just underneath the bridge plate. That's pretty custom with most bass guitars. You're gonna have just that grounding wire, and that most of the time is gonna solve your problems. The copper foil is something that just takes it over the top. It's really, if you're OCD about having grounding, go ahead and put as much copper foil as you can underneath your pick guard. I saw this in another YouTuber's video from years gone by. It's kind of a silly video. You can check it out yourself. I'll put a link in the description, but essentially I saw him put copper foil all over the inside of his pick guard, inside all of the cavities on the bass, and all of a sudden that grounding issue was gone. Where was the grounding issue happening specifically? Well, like I said earlier, when I put the spring underneath the P-bass pickups, that spring was missing originally. So I went in to install the pickups. I must have just not even known what the spring was for. It probably came with the spring. I disregarded the spring, and so my pickups were not grounded to anything. So I put the spring underneath the pickup, and then I also use the copper foil everywhere. I use copper foil underneath the bridge plate, underneath the pick guard, inside all the cavities, and you can hear it for yourself. The before and after was essentially I only had the E string, the low E, on my bass guitar. It was not tuned to E. I just simply was looking at FabFilter EQ. I could see that there was noise. I would pluck the low E string. Regardless of what the note was, you can hear that sizzling grounding issue all over the place. That's just, ever since I've been recording bass guitar, it's just been something I've been dealing with. I've been using gates, I've been using EQ to just take out all the high frequencies. But the most awesome moment I've had with any of this DIY stuff, I felt like Ron Swanson, the sense of accomplishment when I put my headphones on, and I could already see it on the EQ. I didn't know that the bass was still plugged in because there was just no signal happening on the frequency response. Then when I plugged the low E string, you could just see this awesome fundamental frequency of that low E string, and I didn't see any of that top end grounding loop issue sizzle. So couldn't be more excited about that. I wanted to share this with you because if you have not got any copper foil, just go to like Lowe's, Home Depot, any hardware store around town should be carrying some of the copper foil, or you can just get it on Amazon. I'm going to be doing this with my Telecaster, so if you consider subscribing to the channel, you can kind of follow along with my journey as well. I've got a Telecaster that right when COVID was happening, I decided I wanted to have a project to work on. We had a lot of time at home, so I took a Fender Player Series Telecaster, sanded it down, rebuilt it, and that's where the copper foil thing kind of came from. I'm gonna be redoing that here on the YouTube channel, so please consider hitting the subscribe button. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button, and I'll see you next time where it's time to make some music. Thanks for watching.